Hey, it's John Thomas here with Nest Point Group for one last update before Election Day. So let's get into it. So there was a shock poll on over the weekend by Selzer in Iowa. She's a reputable pollster, and it showed that Donald Trump might lose Iowa and Harris will win it. Could that in fact be the case? First, Selzer, she's a good pollster. So let's start with that. But pollsters oftentimes, they are wrong, even the good ones. There are such things as outlier polls. I dug into the crosstabs and I can kind of dissect a couple things that I think allow us to discount it. However, there might be some warning signs in the poll for broader problems, and I'll go through that as well. First, let's talk about the problems with the survey. One, even the New York Times admitted this, Selzer was having a harder time getting older white males to respond to a survey like this, which means it could be overrepresented with more liberal-leaning folks. We're seeing that just across the country. Trump supporters, particularly older white males, have just kind of had it with responding to public opinion surveys, so it's harder to get a representative sample. Or the ones who do respond are a little bit more self-selecting, which might not be truly representative of the actual Trump voter. So that's a problem. Another indicator that that might actually have been the case was that the top issue in Ann Selzer's survey was defending the democracy. In almost no competitive district or state in the country is defending democracy the number one issue. It barely squeaks into a top three issue in like a toss-up area. It's a wobbler third issue. But almost always the top two issues in the following order are economy and economy inflation, and the second would be immigration, with a third that can be public safety. Sometimes that's an immigration bucket, and then maybe a wobbler of preserving democracy. So the fact that Selzer's survey had preserving democracy so high tells us that this might not actually be a representative sample of what Iowans, traditionally a Trump stronghold, are really thinking. So I wouldn't read too much into it. My instincts tell me this is an outlier, especially because Emerson, which is also a good pollster, not historically quite as good as Selzer, but good, put out their own Iowa survey literally 1 hour later and showed Trump up by 9 in the state. That seems more in line with what we would expect. Selzer, if she's right, and this is the one that says Trump's going to lose Iowa, essentially 1 out of every 4 Trump voters who voted for Donald Trump in 2020 would need to have abandoned Donald Trump this cycle and will be voting for Harris. That seems a bridge too far, not just anecdotally, but also what I'm seeing across the country. You're not seeing a lot of defection from Donald Trump. If you stood with him in 2020, you're almost certainly with him now. Donald Trump's approval ratings, to put in perspective, are higher than Ronald Reagan's within the Republican Party. So it strikes me as odd that 1 in 4 would be defecting. I just haven't seen that to be the case. Couple warning signs that might be true out of the Selzer poll, and if true, could be very problematic for Trump on Tuesday night. So here's the two things, the flashing red lights that I'm watching for that could signal a Harris victory or problems for Trump tomorrow. First, is Donald Trump in fact sliding with older white ladies in the last few months, accelerating in the recent weeks? Is it as bad as the Selzer survey indicates? It is possible that he's losing old white women. We know he's lost young white women. If he loses old white women at a accelerating rate, that could be a big problem. Now, second are the strong male turnouts that are likely Trump voters. We call them with low propensity. So we call them zeros or 0 out of 4s, meaning in the last 4 presidential cycles that look like this one, they have no history of turnout. They're registered, but they have no history of voting. Are those male turnouts are they going to keep coming on election day? We have been seeing them voting early, but at a similar rate. Will they vote on election day? If that happens, Trump's potential slide with older white women can be easily countered. If men don't show up tomorrow, that's a problem, especially if Trump is sliding with white women, and Selzer perhaps could have been right as a leading indicator. I don't think she is, but that's what I'm going to be watching. Democrats broadly know they are in trouble. They are in trouble because they've had their butts handed to them in the early vote in almost all of the important states. What the Democrats are arguing right now, their only argument they have, both from the Harris campaign and broadly the Democratic Party, is that, yes, we know we didn't do well in the early vote, but that's okay because Democrats are going to turn out in large margins on election day. There's plenty of Democrats left to turn out. Well, that is technically true. There are plenty of Democrats to turn out. But it's a problem because Democrats are known to be early voters. They're very good early voters. Vote how you vote, both if you vote and how you vote is a habitual thing. So if you are conditioned to vote by mail or vote early, it is unlikely that you would choose not to vote early or by mail in order to vote on election day. That would mean you have to change your voting behavior, which both sides of the aisle typically do not do. I think it more speaks to a lack of enthusiasm on the Democratic side. So could Democrats show up in major ways tomorrow on election day? It's possible, but it's not likely. We would have seen it manifest in enthusiasm in the early vote because that's what these voters are traditionally habituated to do. So going into tomorrow, I would rather be Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. Going into tomorrow, the big thing is this gender gap. If men continue to show up, Donald Trump is the president in a landslide. Odds are Donald Trump wins tomorrow. There is a scenario, of course, in which Harris does win, but the fact is the Sun Belt appears to be gone for Harris. Trump appears to be carrying the Sun Belt, which means Harris's path in that case is that she just doesn't have to win one of the blue wall states. She has to win them all. She has to run the table. And that's a tall order. All Trump has to do in that scenario is block her in one of the blue wall states, which he's favored to do at least one of them. So we'll see. That's what I'm watching. Still looks very favorable for Donald Trump. And again, those two things slide with older white ladies for Trump. And do men show up for Trump? My hunch is they do. But that's my take. I will give you reaction as fast as I can after Election Day. This has been a great time doing this for Spieber. Thanks for watching this election cycle. Once again, it's John Thomas for Nest Point, and we'll see you in about 24 hours.